So I started thinking about it, and I thought maybe I would elaborate a little bit more about the Simon Lizotte PD that I dyed for him, and some techniques and tips, maybe a little procedure, some things I've learned doing this over the years. So for you guys out there that are wanting to do something cool to your disc, here's a couple tips for you. First off, I was doing this a long time ago, and I was using RIT dye because it's cheap, and I could get it at Michael's or whatever your local hobby store or whatever. But the RIT dye formula changed and it doesn't work anymore. So now you have to buy RIT Dye-More Synthetic. The Dye-More will work on your disc, but the colors aren't as good. This says racing red, but it's really not a racing, it's not bright. The old school RIT dye was called cherry red, and it was really bright. So the colors aren't as good, but you can do this Dye-More synthetic stuff. Get it at Walmart. Get it at all your local stores. So what I was doing is I just take a pot, go get the cheapest, thinnest little pot you can get at a Goodwill or something like that, just to avoid any arguments with the significant other or whoever about ruining a pot. Get a big one that the disc will fit all the way in. That'll give you a lot of options to do whatever you want later if you want to dye a disc completely or whatever. So first thing I do is start heating some water in the pot, the desired amount. I mean, you pour the water in first, put the disc in, and dip it down to the bottom and give you an idea of how deep you want it to go. Make that the maximum depth, of course. I always add just a tiny bit more because it's going to evaporate a touch as you start heating it up. So then I start heating the water, and what I do is I put my dye in at that time. I use probably, I don't know, probably about 2 capfuls, would be about right. Maybe a little more, depending on if you were trying to get it a little darker or whatever. So I heat the dye up till it boils. Now, people, I don't know, I've been doing this a lot. I don't know what other people are going to say about this, but I heat it up till it just boils, and then I turn it off. I mean, water boils at, I think, high 130s, and you want it around the 130 mark to be able to dye the disc really well. So I heat it up till it boils, turn it off, and let it sit for like 30 seconds or a minute. I've shot it with a heat gun before to make sure that it's at the 130, 132 range or whatever, but the technique of just boiling it and then turning it off works well. You don't want it any higher than that. If the temperature gets over like 140, 145, up into 160, which it will keep climbing, it will melt your disc. It'll warp them. It'll warp the flight plate as you put it in there. So, put it in there once it's the 130, just as I showed in the previous techniques little video. You hold it in your hand. Now, I wouldn't recommend like propping it up or anything because I've dropped them before. I've propped them up and then I've had something, jiggle in it, have it fall in the dye. I've had a dog walk over and sniff a bucket and knock it over. I mean, it will happen to you, trust me. And when you have like a really nice disc, you do not want somebody walk by and knock that thing over. So I just hold it in my hand, protect it with my life, and start dipping. Like I said, tip it side to side slowly to get the fade. And you'll see when it's 130, you'll see it'll start taking that dye quickly. You'll see it like soaking it up. So leave it in for a little longer at the bottom. Like I'll just put like the bottom piece like this in for a little while and kind of bob it up and down to get it really dark. And then slowly dip it to that spot. So this spot you see that's like faded, I only gave it just a second, a couple seconds of exposure. Just barely dip it, bloop, 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 and that's it. And then I look at it. If it's not dark enough, bloop, 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 a little bit more. So that's all you got to really do. Now, like I said, the main techniques is don't get it too hot, and definitely control the disc. Do not drop it, because if you with hot dye like that, if you drop it in that pot for even a second, that yellow is going to be not yellow anymore. Trust me. I've done it to a lot of discs. So. Another cool one I'll give you guys while I'm doing this, I've been doing this technique lately, is you take a disc, you fill a pot like this much with the dye, and you just set the disc down in it like this, set it down in the pot, and it only covers that little edge, and then I spin it slowly like this, and get just the rim of the disc dyed a different color. This was pink, and I did it with blue, and blue turns nice and purpley when you do it on pink. So I think these are turning out pretty cool. And it's funny because I was doing this like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, before they were ever doing Halo discs. I mean, look at this old Macbeth Destroyer that I did this to a long time ago. And yeah, and then all of a sudden all these Halo discs started coming out, so I thought that was kind of neat. You know, let me see. Let me give you guys a couple of examples real quick on colors. Blue on green looks kind of cool, but it will turn kind of green for you, so you want to be careful using the blue against green. Like here's an example of not to do. Here's blue on orange, and it almost turned brown, it looks like, but I mean, if you look at it, it is blue, but it doesn't look very good. So like orange, no go with blue. There's a pink with blue on it, nice and purple on that one. I like that. There's a light pink Old Champion that I did red on. That one looks pretty sweet. Let's see what else. The color combos are important because you don't want to ruin discs. Like some colors just will not look good together, and you hate to do it, and then you don't know until after you've already dipped it. So let me give you one more example. Another one that's kind of odd is like this was green, and I did it blue on the edge, and you see how it just kind of turns it a darker green. The black rim that you see was already dyed, but that darker green, it didn't really turn blue like I wanted it to. So yeah, just be careful with them. Like I said, a lot of discs, a lot of trial and error to get it right. So it is a good cheap way to get a disc dyed and make it look cool for you guys though. So hope it helps you guys out, and enjoy yourselves. Later.